Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Tone from Tone's Custom Flies. I just decided to do a short video here, try and do another brief explanation of how I do my brushes. These are going to be mostly for heads that I use primarily with craft fur, so we'll keep it nice and simple with a single type of material. We'll do two colors, one base color with one accent, and we're going to get into the electric lettuce color combination, which is a chartreuse over a sky blue, which has become one of my favorite combos of all time. So again, I like to keep it nice and simple, outside of using dubbing brush apparatuses and tables and such. I just like to use my vise when I'm doing these kind of production style. Just makes it a little bit easier for me to have everything in one place. I fashioned a small table that just sits right in the center and is kind of, again, the perfect size to be able to do a 6 to 7 inch brush, which if you're using it for head material, could be 4 or 5 brushes depending on how conservative you are with your brush material. If you're doing full bodies and longer fibers, you can usually do 2 to 3 on them. I just find that the shorter the brush, the more manageable the size is to be able to manipulate and manage those fibers when you're in the middle of a tie, especially if they're going to be longer fibers that you're working with within the brush. So if you have a longer one, sure, you can do them 12, 16, 18 inches, but having to manage that amount of material over that volume of brush can be a little bit overwhelming. So I like to keep them short. Once you get a system set up and you get the mechanics down for it, you can usually run through them pretty quickly. But I'll take my time and go through it just to keep it simple so that you can see exactly how I do it and how simple it can be once you get everything dialed in. So I've got this. This is the dubbing wire in stainless in a .009, the large size from Uni, which has become one of my favorites. And I just have a backwards facing hook over here to catch my bend in the wire. I will have a little bit of dubbing wax because I tend to always use that stuff, just for whatever security you can buy yourself. A good pet grooming brush, because trust me, once you get a not so great conditioned one, you're gonna wish you had a different one. And just some scissors that I use to specifically cut wire, nothing else. Those are my wire scissors. But yeah, let's get into it. So we've got this on our little bobbin here, and I'll just draw a little bit of excess and start wrapping around the post. Post on this other side, I'll usually give 4 or 5 wraps just to lock in place. And you can see, obviously, that ain't gonna go anywhere. So I kind of know the heights. It's gonna rest right about the top of the table. Like I said, I fashioned it so it would rest kind of exactly where I wanted it, in the position between to hold the brush material almost end to end, giving you a little bit of buffer in there too. So I'll take this and put just a little bit of a kink in there to hold that wire a little bit stronger in position around the bend of the hook on the inside. And then for the length that you're going to be running your material, give a little bit of that wax just to hold everything down once you get to that point. At this point, I'll bring my table in here, and then we'll start cutting materials. So what I like to do, and I'll explain it as I go as well, is to build bulk. If you're doing it for head material with craft fur, there's going to be a significant amount of underfur that's going to come out of it once it's all brushed. Therefore, I'm going to lay it a little bit heavier, and I'm going to run it so there's about a 1/2 inch or so, maybe somewhere between a 1/2 inch and a 3/4 inch overhanging the bottom side. And that's going to build a little bit more of that volume to give that craft fur brush more taper. So our base color is going to be this chartreuse, which I showed a different chartreuse earlier, but I have a patch here that's got a little bit more volume to it, which I kind of like. So it looks all clumpy, but once it brushes out, it's going to be very, very smooth. And the contrast with the blue, I think, is going to add a little bit more vibrance to it. So I'm just going to start cutting up pieces of it. Usually I can get through, you know, say a 2 to 3 inch piece. And of course, as the camera's not even on that, well, I'll just show you once I find my scissors. So, just cut out a clump about that big, you know, enough that your fingers can come through and grab the whole thing. Some people like using clips, some people, I mean, everyone's got their own technique here. But I'll just take that, grab it, lay it down. With all the fibers closing in the gap is about the density that you want to go for. I want to see very little space in between those fibers, and that's why I like a nice vibrant color on the top of this platform here, so that I can tell what's going through. The transparency of the density of the material is really going to tell you what that material is going to do. So once you start working with different materials, you're going to find out what kind of volume and density is going to create what kind of lift and profile and strength and taper. And everything's different, you know, you have to evaluate. It's a lot of trial and error with all these different materials that everyone's got, that everyone wants to try out. You know, company to company, batch to batch, everything is going to change. So trial and error again and again. You gotta love it. But that's crafting for you, right? So now we get into the fun part. And like I said, usually once you get your system down, you'll be able to look at it, evaluate how much you want to pull on a single draw, how much you need to cut, how you're going to lay it out. Usually I'll lay out a whole brush within 2 to 3 grabs of material. This one I'm taking parts that were a little bit chunked up just to clean it up, so my next runs are going to be a little bit more fluid through the patch. Again, I think maybe I should have shown how I was doing it through this patch, but I'm sure you can imagine. Like, think about just, you know, a barber cutting hair. You're gonna come through and you're gonna grab it, you know, comb it up, pull it nicely through your fingers, get some of that loose shit out, and then just make a nice clean cut. And like I said, you're gonna have quite a bit of underfur that's gonna come out once you hit that 1/2 inch plus mark on the way back. So you're gonna lose a little bit of that stuff towards the butt section, which is going to be fine. So now looking at this, I know that this is going to be kind of a thin to medium thin volume. Perfect for head material. You're relying on the taper that you created before the head goes on. So without so much density on the inside here by the wire, you're not creating any more lift. You're basically accommodating the profile that you already created within the fly. So at that point, we're going to take our secondary color, our accent color here, and make this electric lettuce happen. So same thing, I'll just comb out a little bit here. And for the accent color, you know, we're just going to do it a little bit more sparsely so it shows through. Ooh, I had some wax on my finger. That didn't work out too well. And still have some wax on my finger. What is sticking? Some of the lower stuff that's just shorter. Like I said, I'm not trying to build too much bulk in here, so that shorter stuff on the accent color, I'll just let loose. I really want the longer stuff to show. And another thing is you could take it and just kind of spread it apart in your hands and hope that it lies as thin as you want it to. You know, just do one or two more small cuts to select out of this material. To obviously see some spots where I might want some more. So. And now you see where I just laid that kind of healthy. If you're gentle enough, you can take it, just spread it apart a little bit more. And you'll see with craft fur, you'll get a good amount of blend in the material as long as it's the same density. That's why the contrast in color is really the most important thing for any of these fibers to stand out. So instead of getting one color that's been blended, you're going to be getting two very different colors contrasting against each other. And that I can live with for now. So I'm going to take this and keep a little bit of tension on here. Bring it over to the other side and pin this down so I can give it a quick wrap. Put some tension on there. 3 or 4 wraps usually does it. And I'll come back. With craft fur, you don't really have to, with some other brush materials that I make, I'll wind up putting a few spins to create tension from this side first so it catches the material right about here at this line. But I'll keep these edges nice and tight, so material free from anything from a certain point outward. And then just give a little bit of tension on that. Pull this out of the way. Without giving those first tensioning spins from this side in, the craft fur usually holds pretty well and you don't have to worry about it falling out if you give it just a touch of tension there. So, come through. We already gained tension. I can feel it in my left hand, your right side, and then we'll just start building from there. The craft fur, once it gets tangled up in there, tends to free up pretty easily as long as you've got a good brush, which is super important. And it's just a matter of finding the density at which you can start to pick all of this stuff out. So I like to get it tight enough that I'm not going to lose a lot of material if I do lose some in here, but loose enough that you can free anything. So I mean, there's a very, very fine balance between there. And if you look what I did on this side where I have my hook bending in there, like some of the other tables have either a mechanism that moves up under tension or a spring that comes in closer under tension, where I look at the bend, or the angle rather, that's created from the tension of the wire while twisting of the hook shank itself. So as that hook shank rises, I'll know exactly how much tension is consistent somewhere in this line. And the real trick is to find out if there's any inconsistencies in tension based on trapped materials or the type of wire that you have within here somewhere in this mix. And you'll be able to find that after the first pick out. So I wait until it's pretty consistent out here, pretty consistent over here, nice and tight. This starts lifting up to a decent angle. Usually I'd say, it's ready at about a 45-degree angle if it's consistent throughout the length of the brush. So now I feel comfortable with the tension there. Know that a lot of this underfur still is going to brush out. So if you see a lot of material coming out, that extra ½ an inch worth of stuff, all that underfur that's that short, is coming right off. I'll just keep a little bit of tension on that hook because we're anchored to the post over here. Just keep that tension up. So once I start brushing, just a light pick. And you can see all those tiny, tiny, tiny fibers coming out right now. The thing that I love, the effect on craft fur here, or the effect of craft fur, is the smoothness. So you can really do a lot with blending this and other materials, especially when this is head material, when you see how smooth it all lays out. So now I'm looking through the brush here. I'm looking at the twists in the wire, making sure that they're all pretty snug and consistent. And I could see that it's a little bit tighter here and here, and a little bit looser in here. So let's come back through. Ugh, got some fibers in my mouth. It's the name of the game here. And you can start to see those areas close up, and just be very careful how much tension, because see, now that just lifted right up. And then by the time you're ready to brush side to side, you should have pretty much all of your fibers free. You'll feel and hear less picking and clicking. And start to see that nice smooth flow. Now, all that other stuff comes out. You can save all your dubbing material if you like. Sometimes when I'm making this, I run through so much of it that I don't even bother to, or I'll just, set aside a bag and give it away to somebody because I don't really use it too much. But I'll always double check it. So once I have a clean brush over here, relatively clean, just give it a quick pick. And notice that we're not pulling out any more material. It's tight enough. All of the material that has been loosened is free of the brush, so you're not going to have any stragglers or anything beside it after you do the tying. So again, with the craft fur, nice and smooth. It'll blend into the profiles that you create so well. Here's where I take my wire scissors, cut that end, cut that end. I'll just put a little kink in it. Sometimes, it slows down any of the tension. You're not going to get a lot of unraveling if you hit a certain tension on it. But I like to do it just for my own sake. And then I'll just kind of preen these back, to be able to store them properly. If you want to make them fancy and store them nice and clean, just give them a quick brush out. And there you go. This is your two-toned accent color, electric lettuce, craft fur brush. Hope y'all learned something today. Enjoy yourselves, and I'll catch you on the next one.